Have you ever woken up from a dream feeling exhausted, confused, or strangely burdened, even after a full night of sleep? What if I told you that for years, some people unknowingly left their dream realm completely unprotected, and according to a former witch from Angola, that made them easy targets for spiritual attacks while they slept? Tonight, I'm going to reveal the 5 spiritual gates that were allegedly used to access people's dreams, and more importantly, how those gates were shut forever. Before I reveal the most overlooked gate of all, the one that gave me access to a worship leader's dreams for an entire year, you need to understand something. Several people closed these gates using simple spiritual disciplines, and the moment they did, every attack stopped. Stay with me, because the final protection protocol changed everything. According to the speaker's account, the first gate was unforgiveness and bitterness, and over the years, he claimed that this was one of the easiest openings to recognize. He described how many people spent their days appearing strong on the outside, yet carried unresolved anger deep inside. Some had been hurt by family members, some by friends, some by people they trusted the most. During the day, they distracted themselves with work, responsibilities, and daily routines. But at night, when everything became quiet, those unresolved emotions remained. The speaker claimed that bitterness was different from ordinary disappointment. In his view, disappointment could pass, but bitterness settled in and stayed. It replayed old conversations, reopened old wounds, and kept painful memories alive long after the original event had ended. He said that many people believed they had moved on, when in reality they were still carrying the emotional weight of what happened. He described how anger often grows in silence. At first it feels justified. Someone says something hurtful. Someone breaks a promise. Someone betrays trust. And the emotional reaction feels completely understandable. But according to his account, when that anger is carried day after day without resolution, it slowly begins changing the person's emotional state. The situation may remain in the past, yet the emotions continue living in the present. The speaker claimed that this emotional condition made people especially vulnerable during sleep. He believed that dreams often reflect what is happening deep within the heart and mind. When resentment remains active, it can influence the themes, images, and emotions that appear throughout the night. Instead of experiencing peaceful rest, many people find themselves repeatedly revisiting conflicts in their dreams. He shared the story of a businessman in Lubango. According to the speaker, this man had a serious disagreement with his brother. What began as a family conflict eventually became something much deeper. Communication broke down. Trust disappeared. Every attempt at reconciliation seemed to fail. As months passed, the emotional distance between them continued growing. The speaker claimed that the businessman thought about the conflict constantly. During business meetings, he thought about it. During family gatherings, he thought about it. Even during moments of success, the unresolved tension remained in the background. It became a permanent source of frustration. According to the story, the businessman went to sleep each night carrying the same emotional burden. His mind never fully disconnected from the conflict. The arguments continued replaying in different forms. New scenarios appeared. Imagined conversations took place. Old memories returned repeatedly. The speaker claimed that this pattern continued for a long time. Night after night, the emotional wound remained open. Instead of healing, it was being reinforced. Each morning, the businessman woke up feeling even more convinced that his brother was the enemy. Each dream seemed to strengthen the anger rather than resolve it. What made the situation interesting, according to the speaker, was that the conflict began affecting every area of the man's life. Decisions became more emotional. Reactions became more intense. Small disagreements felt larger than they actually were. Relationships with other people began suffering as well. The speaker suggested that bitterness rarely stays confined to one area of life. It spreads. A conflict with one person starts influencing how someone sees everyone else. Trust becomes harder. Patience becomes shorter. Suspicion becomes stronger. Before long, the original problem has multiplied into many new problems. He claimed that this is why forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many people assume forgiveness means pretending nothing happened. Others think it means approving of bad behavior. But according to the speaker's perspective, forgiveness is primarily about refusing to let the offense continue controlling your future. He described forgiveness as a decision rather than a feeling. Feelings may take time to heal, but decisions can happen immediately. The moment someone chooses to release bitterness, the healing process begins. Memory may remain, but the emotional chains begin weakening. According to the story, the businessman eventually reached that point. After carrying anger for a long period of time, he finally decided to forgive his brother. The circumstances had not changed overnight. The past could not be erased. Yet he chose to stop feeding the resentment. The speaker claimed that the change was immediate. The emotional atmosphere shifted. The recurring dreams stopped. The constant cycle of conflict ended. What had been an ongoing source of disturbance suddenly lost its influence. Whether someone agrees with the spiritual explanation or not, the story highlights an important reality. Unresolved bitterness has consequences. It affects thoughts, emotions, relationships, and even sleep quality. Many psychologists, counselors, and relationship experts would agree that carrying long-term resentment places enormous stress on the mind and body. The speaker encouraged listeners to examine their own lives carefully. Is there someone whose name immediately triggers anger? Is there a conversation that still causes emotional pain years later? Is there a situation that keeps replaying in your thoughts long after it ended? These questions, he suggested, may reveal areas where healing is still needed. He believed that peaceful sleep often begins with emotional peace. When the heart is carrying less conflict, the mind tends to rest more easily. When resentment is released, mental energy is no longer consumed by old battles. The result is often a greater sense of calm, clarity, and restoration. The second gate, according to the speaker, was fear and anxiety. He claimed that fear operated differently from bitterness, but could become just as powerful. Unlike anger, which focuses on the past, fear focuses on the future. It constantly asks, what if? What if something bad happens? What if things get worse? What if danger is closer than I realize? The speaker described fear as one of the most exhausting emotions a person can carry. It keeps the mind active even when the body is tired. It turns possibilities into certainties. It convinces people that imagined threats are already becoming reality. According to his account, many people spend their evenings consuming information that increases anxiety. They worry about finances, relationships, health concerns, world events, and countless other possibilities. By the time they finally lie down to sleep, their minds are still racing. He claimed that fear rarely announces itself dramatically. Instead, it often arrives quietly. A small concern appears, then another, then another. Eventually, the mind becomes trapped in a cycle of worry that feels impossible to escape. The speaker shared the story of a young woman in Huambo. According to his account, she constantly feared witchcraft attacks. She heard stories from others. She worried about unseen dangers. She spent large amounts of time thinking about what might happen to her. Ironically, the speaker claimed, her fear became stronger than the threat she feared. Every unusual experience seemed to confirm her worries. Every strange dream reinforced her anxiety. Every coincidence appeared meaningful. He suggested that fear creates a powerful feedback loop. People become afraid, then they begin looking for evidence that confirms the fear. Once they find something that appears to support it, the fear grows stronger. Then they search for even more evidence. The cycle continues repeating itself. According to the story, the young woman entered this cycle completely. She expected bad experiences before they happened. She anticipated frightening dreams before falling asleep. She prepared herself emotionally for attacks every single night. The speaker believed that this expectation shaped her entire experience. Instead of approaching sleep with peace, she approached it with tension. Instead of resting confidently, she remained on alert. Instead of expecting restoration, she expected danger. He argued that fear has a remarkable ability to magnify ordinary experiences. A normal dream becomes terrifying. A random coincidence becomes a warning sign. A temporary challenge becomes a permanent disaster. Fear changes perception long before it changes reality. The speaker encouraged listeners to recognize how often fear steals peace before anything has actually happened. Many people suffer twice, once in imagination and again in reality. Sometimes the imagined suffering becomes even greater than the real event itself. According to his account, the young woman eventually began replacing fear with faith-based declarations. She stopped feeding anxious thoughts. She stopped focusing on worst-case scenarios. She began concentrating on confidence rather than worry. The speaker claimed that as her mindset changed, her experiences changed as well. The cycle of anxiety weakened. The expectation of danger disappeared. Peace gradually replaced fear. Confidence replaced uncertainty. Rest replaced constant vigilance. Whether someone interprets the story spiritually, psychologically, or emotionally, it points toward an important lesson. Fear often grows wherever attention continually feeds it. The more people focus on threats, the larger those threats appear. The more people focus on peace, the easier it becomes to experience peace. And according to the speaker, that realization became one of the most important discoveries people could make before closing their eyes at night. Because many never realize how much of their nighttime experience is being shaped by what they carry into sleep, long before their head ever touches the pillow. According to the speaker's account, the third gate was unconfessed sin and spiritual compromise. He claimed that this was one of the most misunderstood areas of all. Many people focused on what was happening around them, but rarely paid attention to what was happening within them. They looked for external explanations while ignoring internal struggles that had quietly taken root over time. The speaker believed that hidden compromise carried a unique weight. Unlike mistakes that are acknowledged and corrected, hidden compromise survives in secrecy. It remains protected from accountability. It avoids exposure. And because it remains unaddressed, it often grows stronger with time. He claimed that many people live with two versions of themselves. There is the public version everyone sees, and there is the private version known only to them. The public version appears confident, disciplined, and spiritually strong. The private version wrestles with habits, temptations, and decisions nobody else knows about. According to the speaker, the problem is not simply the mistake itself. The deeper issue is what happens when someone continually justifies behavior they know is wrong. Every act of compromise becomes easier to repeat. Every repetition weakens resistance. Eventually, what once felt uncomfortable begins feeling normal. The speaker shared the story of a pastor in Cabinda. According to his account, this pastor was respected in his community. People admired his leadership. They listened to his sermons. They viewed him as a source of wisdom and encouragement. From the outside, everything appeared strong and stable. But privately, the speaker claimed, the pastor struggled with secret pornography. It was a battle nobody knew about. He continued preaching publicly while carrying private guilt. He prayed with others while quietly fighting shame. The conflict between his public image and private reality became increasingly difficult to manage. According to the story, the hidden habit began affecting more than his conscience. It started influencing his thoughts throughout the day. His attention became divided. His focus weakened. His confidence slowly eroded. Even when he appeared successful externally, internally he felt trapped. The speaker argued that secrecy creates isolation. The more someone hides a struggle, the less likely they are to seek help. The less help they seek, the stronger the struggle becomes. Over time, the problem gains influence simply because it remains unchallenged. He claimed that compromise rarely stays in one area. A person may think they are controlling it, but eventually it begins shaping attitudes, decisions, emotions, and priorities. What started as a private issue gradually affects every other part of life. According to the speaker's perspective, hidden compromise often creates a constant sense of uneasiness. People know something is wrong, even when nobody else does. They carry that awareness into conversations. They carry it into relationships. And eventually, they carry it into sleep. The speaker suggested that many recurring dreams reflect unresolved conflicts taking place within the mind and conscience. When someone spends their days wrestling with guilt, shame, or internal contradiction, those struggles frequently appear during the night in different forms. He described how the pastor's situation continued for a long time. Outwardly, he maintained his responsibilities. Inwardly, he felt increasingly exhausted. The pressure of maintaining appearances became difficult. Every day required more effort than the one before. According to the account, the turning point came when the pastor finally stopped hiding. Instead of protecting the secret, he confronted it. Instead of making excuses, he accepted responsibility. Instead of avoiding the issue, he brought it into the light. The speaker emphasized that confession is often misunderstood. Many people view confession as weakness. They see it as embarrassing or humiliating. But according to his perspective, confession is actually an act of strength because it requires honesty. Honesty can be uncomfortable. It forces people to acknowledge realities they would rather avoid. It removes excuses. It removes denial. It removes the protective stories people sometimes tell themselves. But once honesty enters the situation, genuine change becomes possible. The speaker claimed that the pastor experienced exactly that. Once he acknowledged the problem, he could finally begin addressing it. The burden of secrecy started lifting. The cycle that had controlled him began weakening. Progress became possible because deception was no longer protecting the struggle. Whether someone approaches the story spiritually or psychologically, the lesson remains significant. Hidden habits often gain power through secrecy. The moment they are confronted honestly, their influence frequently begins shrinking. What feels impossible in darkness often becomes manageable in the light. The speaker encouraged listeners to examine areas of their lives they avoid discussing, not because he wanted people to live in fear, but because he believed freedom begins with truth. Problems cannot be solved if they are never acknowledged. Healing rarely happens where denial continues to exist. According to his account, many people spend years searching for peace while refusing to confront the very issues disturbing their peace. They focus on symptoms while ignoring causes. They seek relief while avoiding responsibility. Yet lasting change often begins when someone chooses honesty over comfort. The speaker believed that self-examination requires courage. Looking inward is rarely easy. It means asking difficult questions. It means confronting uncomfortable realities. It means recognizing that sometimes the greatest obstacles are not outside of us, but within us. And according to the story, once the pastor dealt with the compromise honestly, everything began changing. The burden lessened. The conflict weakened. The sense of captivity disappeared. What had once controlled him no longer possessed the same power. The fourth gate, according to the speaker, involved cursed or dedicated objects inside the home. He claimed that many people never considered this possibility because they viewed objects as merely decorative, sentimental, or cultural. They rarely questioned where certain items came from, what they represented, or why they had entered the home in the first place. The speaker explained that throughout history, objects have carried meaning. A simple item can represent beliefs, traditions, memories, or values. Some objects are treasured because of family history. Others are collected because they seem interesting or unique. Most people never think beyond the physical appearance. According to his account, however, certain items deserved closer examination. He believed that people should understand the origin and purpose of things they bring into their living spaces. Not because every unusual object is dangerous, but because awareness matters. The speaker shared the story of a family in Malanje. According to the account, this family experienced recurring nightmares that affected everyone in the household. The pattern was unusual. Different family members reported similar disturbances. The experiences continued for an extended period of time. At first, they searched for ordinary explanations. Stress was considered. Daily pressures were considered. Lifestyle changes were considered. Yet the experiences persisted. The situation became increasingly frustrating because no obvious cause could be identified. The speaker claimed that eventually they decided to examine their environment more carefully. They looked throughout the house. They considered items that had been present for years. They asked questions they had never asked before. Where did certain objects come from? What was their history? Why were they there? According to the story, they discovered a traditional mask hanging in the hallway. To many visitors, it appeared decorative. To the family, it had become part of the background. Nobody paid much attention to it anymore. It was simply there. But the speaker claimed the object carried significance beyond decoration. He believed it had been associated with ancestral spiritual practices. Whether one agrees with that interpretation or not, the family became concerned enough to investigate further. What fascinated the speaker most was how easily people become accustomed to things around them. An object may remain on a wall for years without anyone questioning it. Familiarity often removes curiosity. People stop noticing what has always been there. He argued that this principle applies beyond physical objects. People become accustomed to environments, influences, routines, and habits simply because they are familiar. They stop asking whether those influences are helpful or harmful. Familiarity creates acceptance. According to the account, the family eventually removed the mask and changed the atmosphere of the home. The speaker claimed that afterward, the recurring nightmares stopped. To him, this confirmed the importance of evaluating one's environment carefully. Whether someone accepts the spiritual interpretation or views the story differently, there is still an interesting lesson. Our surroundings influence us more than we realize. The spaces we live in affect our emotions, thoughts, stress levels, and sense of peace. What we allow into our environment matters. The speaker encouraged listeners to become intentional about the atmosphere of their homes. He believed that people often pay close attention to physical cleanliness while ignoring emotional and spiritual atmosphere. Yet both contribute to how a home feels. He described a home as more than walls and furniture. A home is where people recover from long days. It is where families gather. It is where minds rest. It is where people prepare for tomorrow. Because of that, he argued, the environment deserves careful attention. According to the speaker, many people spend years trying to understand why peace feels distant without ever examining what surrounds them every day. Sometimes the answers are not as complicated as they appear. Sometimes awareness reveals things that routine has hidden. And as he continued explaining these experiences, he suggested that understanding these gates was only part of the story. Because identifying a problem is one thing, but learning how people eventually closed those gates completely became an entirely different lesson. According to the speaker's account, the fifth gate was a lack of spiritual protection before sleep, and he claimed that this was the most common gate of all. Unlike bitterness, fear, compromise, or questionable objects, this gate did not require any major life problem to exist. In his view, people often left it open simply because they never thought about it. The speaker explained that many individuals are careful throughout the day. They lock their doors before leaving home. They protect their finances with passwords. They secure important documents. They take precautions against risks they can see. Yet when night arrives, many simply lie down and fall asleep without any intentional preparation. According to his account, that pattern always fascinated him. People understood the importance of protection in almost every area of life, but rarely considered protecting the hours when they were most vulnerable. Sleep occupies nearly a third of a person's life, yet many approach it with less preparation than they give to far smaller parts of their daily routine. The speaker claimed that this was not necessarily because people were careless. Most simply never learned to think about sleep intentionally. They viewed sleep as something automatic, something that happened naturally, something that required no preparation beyond turning off the lights and closing their eyes. He argued that habits reveal priorities. The things people consistently prepare for are usually the things they consider important. Athletes prepare before competition. Students prepare before examinations. Professionals prepare before important meetings. Yet according to the speaker, many never prepare for the one activity they engage in every single night. The story he shared involved a worship leader in Namibia. According to the account, she was deeply committed to her faith. She served faithfully. She prayed passionately. She spent time helping others. By every visible standard, she appeared spiritually strong. The speaker emphasized this point carefully because he believed many listeners assumed vulnerability only affected people who were careless or indifferent. According to his perspective, that assumption was incorrect. Even disciplined individuals could overlook important areas simply because nobody had ever taught them to pay attention. The worship leader maintained many positive spiritual habits. She prayed regularly. She participated actively in church life. She encouraged other people. She invested time in worship and service. Yet according to the speaker, one simple habit was missing. Every night she went to bed without specifically praying over her sleep. The speaker claimed that this continued for an entire year. Nothing dramatic, nothing intentional, no rebellion, no deliberate neglect. She simply never thought about it. Sleep came and she slept. According to his account, many people listening would probably recognize themselves in that pattern. They pray in the morning. They pray before meals. They pray during difficult situations. They pray when they need guidance. But bedtime prayer becomes inconsistent, rushed, or forgotten entirely. The speaker believed that routine often creates blind spots. When something becomes familiar, people stop examining it. They assume everything is fine because nothing appears obviously wrong. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Eventually a pattern becomes normal simply because it has existed for so long. He claimed that the worship leader never realized the significance of this habit until much later. Like many people, she focused on visible challenges while overlooking something that happened every night. The speaker described how sleep creates a unique condition. The body becomes still. Daily activities stop. The mind begins transitioning into a different state of awareness. Responsibilities pause. Conversations end. The noise of the day fades away. Whether viewed spiritually, emotionally, or psychologically, sleep represents a transition. And according to the speaker, transitions often deserve attention. He suggested that successful people understand the importance of transitions. Morning routines influence the day. Evening routines influence the night. Preparation influences outcomes. Moments before an activity often shape the experience that follows. The speaker believed many people underestimate the power of intentional preparation. They assume outcomes happen randomly. Yet countless studies in psychology, performance, and habit formation suggest otherwise. What people consistently do before an activity often affects the quality of that activity. Athletes warm up before competing. Speakers prepare before presentations. Pilots follow checklists before flights. Professionals create routines because routines reduce unnecessary risk. According to the speaker, bedtime should be viewed similarly. He claimed that many people treat sleep as an ending, and perhaps it should also be viewed as a beginning. It is the beginning of rest, the beginning of recovery, the beginning of mental restoration, the beginning of a process that prepares someone for tomorrow. The worship leader eventually learned this lesson. According to the account, someone encouraged her to begin praying intentionally before sleep. Not occasionally, not only when problems appeared, every night. The speaker claimed that she started developing a simple routine. Before closing her eyes, she would pause. She would focus. She would pray intentionally rather than casually. She would approach sleep with purpose rather than assumption. At first, the routine seemed small. Just a few moments, just a few words, just a simple act of preparation. Yet according to the speaker, consistency transformed the habit into something powerful. He argued that many life-changing improvements begin this way. Not with dramatic events, not with extraordinary breakthroughs, but with small actions repeated consistently over time. A single workout changes little. A year of workouts changes everything. A single healthy meal changes little. A year of healthy eating changes everything. The speaker believed bedtime preparation worked similarly. One intentional night may not seem remarkable, but hundreds of intentional nights create an entirely different pattern. According to his account, the worship leader noticed changes after adopting the practice. She approached sleep differently. She felt more at peace. She felt more prepared. She felt more confident. The act of preparation itself created a greater sense of security. Whether one accepts the speaker's spiritual interpretation, or views the experience psychologically, there is something undeniably powerful about ending the day intentionally rather than accidentally. Many people spend their evenings absorbing stress. They scroll through negative news. They replay arguments. They think about unfinished responsibilities. They focus on problems they cannot solve before morning. Then they immediately attempt to sleep. The speaker questioned whether this approach truly prepares the mind for rest. He suggested that the final thoughts before sleep often matter more than people realize. The mind tends to continue processing whatever receives attention last. If someone ends the day with anxiety, anxiety often remains active. If someone ends the day with fear often lingers. If someone ends the day with peace frequently follows. According to the account, intentional prayer before sleep served as a way of redirecting attention. Instead of focusing on uncertainty, focus shifted toward confidence. Instead of focusing on problems, focus shifted toward trust. Instead of focusing on fear, focus shifted toward peace. The speaker believed this shift alone carried tremendous value. He described how many people unknowingly bring the entire weight of the day into bed with them. Every disappointment, every frustration, every concern, every unfinished task. Then they wonder why rest feels difficult. According to his perspective, preparation allows people to release some of that weight before sleep begins. The worship leader continued practicing this routine consistently, night after night, week after week, month after month, and according to the speaker, what had once been overlooked became one of the strongest habits in her life. The lesson, he suggested, extended far beyond one person. Many people spend years searching for complicated answers while overlooking simple disciplines. They look for extraordinary solutions while ignoring ordinary habits. Yet some of the most meaningful improvements begin with simple actions practiced faithfully over time. The speaker encouraged listeners to examine their own evening routines honestly. What is the final thing you do before sleep? What thoughts occupy your attention? What emotions are you carrying into the night? What habits are shaping your rest without you even realizing it? According to his account, these questions matter because sleep is not merely an interruption between 2 days. It is part of life itself. It affects mood, focus, energy, decision-making, relationships, productivity, health. Virtually every area of daily experience is influenced by the quality of rest a person receives. And that is why, according to the speaker, so many people eventually discovered that protecting their nights was just as important as managing their days, because once they understood the gates that had remained open, they could finally begin learning the complete protection protocol that transformed everything that followed. As we come to the end of this discussion, I want you to remember something important. According to the experiences shared throughout this message, none of these gates remained open by force. They remained open because people didn't realize they existed. The businessman carried bitterness. The young woman carried fear. The pastor carried hidden compromise. The family lived with an object they never questioned. The worship leader simply never prepared before sleep. Yet the moment they became aware, everything began to change. Whether you view these stories from a spiritual perspective, a personal growth perspective, or simply as lessons about protecting your peace of mind, one truth stands out. What you carry into the night often follows you into your sleep. The thoughts you nurture, the emotions you refuse to release, the fears you repeatedly feed, and the habits you practice every day can shape far more of your life than you realize. Many people spend years trying to understand why their nights feel restless, why their minds never seem to switch off, or why peace feels just out of reach. Sometimes the answer begins with taking an honest look at the gates that may have been left open. And before you leave, let me ask you one question. What if the recurring struggle you've been experiencing isn't you, is something you have to simply live with? What if one small change, the one act of forgiveness, one decision to release fear, one commitment to consistency, could completely change what happens when you close your eyes tonight. Think about that for a moment, because in the next message, we're going even deeper into the protection protocol itself and some of the principles we're going to discuss are things most people have never considered before. So don't miss what's coming next. And to everyone who stayed with me until the very end, thank you. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for listening with an open mind. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this message encouraged you, taught you something new, or gave you a different perspective to think about, then share it with someone who may need to hear it. Until next time, take care of your mind, guard your peace, protect your rest, and never underestimate the importance of what you carry with you into the night.